Unit 5, Standard 3, Graph Using Point Slope Form. This video is going to work only on Level 1 and Level 2 skills. Level 1 just asks you to identify the slope and the point from a point slope form equation, and Level 2 asks you to graph a simple point slope form equation. This is what point slope form looks like. This x1 and y1 that I have written in red is our point. And remember, when we write our points, we write them with parentheses, a comma in between, x first, then y. So x1, y1 is our point. And then, like the name suggests, we also are given a slope in a point slope form equation. And the slope, just like with with our slope-intercept form equation from our previous standards, our slope is just m, and that's written in purple. So when you are looking at these examples down here, and we're just going to do A through F today, we are trying to find the point and the slope. That's what a level 1 is going to ask us to do. So in number 1 here, we need to identify the point first. Now be careful, because when you look at point slope form, notice that the point has a negative in front of it on both the x and the y. But when we wrote the point, we didn't write the negative. That means that my x and my y values are always going to be the opposite sign of what they appear to be. So my point in this first one is going to be 7, 1. I know that this is my x value because it's found inside the parentheses, and I know that this is my y value because it was on the opposite side. I'm not making this -7 and I'm not making this -1 because the negative was already part of the form from the equation. And the slope is always found directly in front of the parentheses. So in this case, our slope is going to be 3/4. And that's all it's asking us to do for level 1. So we're going to practice it a few more times. In the next one, we need to identify the point. And remember, that would be opposite sign of what it appears to be. So that looks like a -1, so it's really +1. This looks like a -5, which means it's really a +5. So I have 1, 5 as my point. Then slope. I have -2 in front of the parentheses, so my slope is -2. Let's take a look at C. My point first. This looks like a -4, which means it's really a +4. And this looks like a +3, which means really it's a -3. +4, -3. Remember, it's always the opposite of what it appears to be. Now for the slope. The number in front of the parentheses is 1/5, so my slope is 1/5. Let's take a look at D. The point, this looks like a +2, but really we know that it's the opposite of what it appears to be, so it's going to be a -2. This looks like a -4, but it's the opposite of what it appears to be, so it's really a +4. Our slope is 3. Let's take a look at E. Our point. Here's the x part. Remember, x is found in the parentheses. It looks like a positive 6, so it's the opposite, negative 6. This looks like a negative 8, but it's the opposite, it's positive 8. And then our slope. The number in front is negative 2/5. Let's take a look at F. We have a point. It looks like a positive 7, which means it really is negative 7. It looks like positive 2, which means it's really negative 2. And then our slope is the number in front. So it's 1/3. Let's take a look at how we would graph those. So all of A through F is an example of level 1. Let's take a look and see what an example for level 2 might look like. So our first step would be to identify our point and our slope again. So we have a point and a slope. Now, how do I know that something was in point slope form? Because it won't always be a single standalone standard that says, hey, this is point slope form. I know that something is in point slope form when I have parentheses and I have a y onto the opposite side. So when my x value is being added or subtracted to something in parentheses and I've got a number on the other side with a y, that means it's point slope form. So my point looks like positive 4, so it's really negative 4. And this looks like negative 2, but it's really positive 2. And then my slope is the number in front of the parentheses. So it looks like there's just a negative sign there, but we know that that's really a negative 1. Once we have our point and our slope, we can start graphing. Just like when we graphed slope-intercept form, we had a point that we started off on, and in that example it was a y-intercept, and then we counted our slope rise over run. Well, in this case, instead of being given a y-intercept, we are given a point to start at, negative 4, 2. So negative 1, 2, 3, 4, up 1, 2. There's my point that I'm going to start at. And now I'm going to count my slope. Remember, it's always a good idea for you to rate your slope as a fraction. So instead of just making it negative 1, we're going to make it negative 1 over 1. Because that top number tells me how many to move up or down, and the bottom number tells me how to move left or right. Now, we always move to the right because we try to keep our bottom number positive. So starting from our point at negative 4, 2, I'm going to go down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1, all the way across. Then we're going to use a straight edge to connect the dots. All the way across, and we're going to put an arrow on either side. Looking at B, we need to identify our point and our slope. Our point is at 1 because it looks like a -1, so that means it's 1. And -5 because it looked like a +5, and it's always the opposite of what it appears to be. And our slope is already written as a fraction for us in this one, 3/4. So now it's time to graph. This is the point we're going to start at. 1, -5. And here's our slope. We're going to go up 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Up 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And we ran out of room, so now it's time to connect our dots with our straight edge. And I understand you might not have a ruler at home. Any straight edge will work, your ID or driver's license. And put arrows on either end. And that's the end of level 2.